Okay, let's take a look at a tool that can be used to turn already generated low-level questioning into higher-level questions in just a few steps. Let's use the content of Christopher Columbus. Almost all grade levels discuss Columbus, so this is a good place to start. Let's line out a few rules for using open-ended questioning in the classroom. First, don't skip over or overlook the lower-level memory-type questions. They are essential for moving up blooms and for creating higher-level questions. Second, consider the time spent on lower-level questioning. Too often, we find ourselves spending too much time generating and responding to lower-level questions, and we save the higher-level questions, which by default are more difficult to respond to, for the small amount of time we have left in the lesson cycle. I propose that we flip that thinking on its head. Take a look at the Kingore thinking triangle. The lowest level questions, the memory questions, are getting the smallest piece of the triangle. We then move down the triangle to the highest level questions at the base, the largest part of the triangle, the place where we should spend the bulk of our instructional time. Using our Columbus example, we start in the memory section. These questions are the who, what, when, where type questions. They are essential to building on schema in order to get students to a place to answer the more divergent questions. Students can usually answer these questions based on text provided or lecture. As you can see, the memory level questioning for our example would look more like a fill-in-the-blank statement. In 1492, blank sailed the ocean blue. Students would know the answer is Columbus based on nonfiction text or information provided by the teacher. Moving to convergent level questioning requires a slight jump to the whys and hows. This is a natural progression that a lot of teachers make. Many times, though, we just tack the words and why onto the end of the question. We can increase the level of questioning slightly by changing the tone of the question to something like the one in the example. Based on the evidence, what were his 3 most important reasons? As you can see, this response will still be generated by evidence from text or lecture. These questions are good for baseline knowledge but require minimal thinking and no critical thinking. As we move down the triangle, we move up blooms, and the level of questioning increases in complexity. Asking evaluative questions moves the students from generating responses based only on the text or lecture to adding their point of view or opinion to the responses. Students get some choice in the direction of responses, and that generates critical thinking. Of course, by default, students will need to use some evidence, explicit or not, to support their responses. In our example, the evaluative question is, what is the most harmful effect of his voyage? The choice is that the students get to choose which of the effects they deem as most harmful. Supporting their choice with evidence from text or lecture would increase their depth of knowledge on the subject. Lastly, we get to divergent or speculative questions. These are, hands down, the most difficult questions to answer and generate the most critical thinking. Students need baseline information from all the other levels of questioning to be able to respond to a speculative question. The question posed in our example is, what positive outcomes would have resulted from Columbus staying home? Students will not have explicit information to answer this question because, well, it didn't happen. Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Students will need to speculate, based on facts given, about the what if. These responses are divergent from the information provided in text or lecture. Naturally, these are more difficult to grade as well, but the yield on student progress by asking these types of questions is exponential. Kinder teachers may be thinking, there's no way that my kids can answer the divergent question. I'd like to say, I respectfully disagree. They absolutely can discuss what would have happened if Columbus stayed home. The first conclusion they can come to is that the Americas would not have been discovered, or maybe the Americas may have been discovered by someone else. These are perfectly acceptable divergent and speculative responses that kindergartners can generate. Secondary students can add more to the divergent answers by including the effects on the native peoples that would have been avoided had Columbus stayed home. These are all avenues that can be explored given time. The last 2 levels of the Kingore thinking triangle require more time for students to respond. This is the reason teachers need to be spending more time in the upper level. Allowing students time to craft responses to the highest level questions yields critical thinking and deeper complexity in students' gained knowledge. Use this tool to take your general, everyday, important questions and move students to respond to higher level questioning.